Thanks, Skip. So next up is Max Ogden. And if you know anything about the Civ Apps project and all the stuff that Skip outlined for us, you'll know that Max Ogden is something of a legend here in Portland. So Max is going to talk about why middleware is the key to successful Gov 2.0. Max, go ahead and take it away. Thanks.
Hey, I am ironic facial hair. I mean, Max Ogden. Nice to see you all today. So I'm going to talk about, from my perspective as a community member and a developer, what I learned in the Civic Apps contest so far. And basically, it boils down to this. It's all about the data. And I'm glad that Skip also touched on that topic. We have entities in Portland devoted to collecting data. And I think that one of the reasons that Civic Apps has been so awesome to work with from my perspective is that organizations like Metro, they do a lot of the work of organizing the data and collecting data from all these municipalities. There are something like 45 municipalities in the Portland region. So Civic Apps represents not just Metro. Metro represents a lot of entities, but Civic Apps is all these other entities, the transit company here, TriMet, there's the county, the city, all of these regional entities that are collecting data. So you get this really awesome network effect where you have all of the government organized, they release their data through one central place, and then the network effect of the community takes over and you put the data in the front of, in the hands of as many developers as possible to get as many applications. But I want to share a message with the government. Please stop making the applications. You do a great job of making the data, but the community is much better at making the applications just because we have so many more resources to spend on the application development. This is from a Peace Corps for Programmers essay, and it's the greatest threat to the program of open data is lack of permission. When you have people inside of governments making applications, you have government contracts, government deadlines. If all a government did was release as much raw data as possible, I think that you would see a lot more flourishing application development happen in the public sector. So if government stopped building the clunky web interfaces that we're used to, the public would make really fancy Web 2.0 interfaces on the same data. Now, the first principle of good data is that it's structured. This means that the data represents something important. It's not unformatted financial PDFs that have been scanned. It should also be replicable, which means that if I request data from the city, somebody at the city doesn't have to go and burn a CD, take 6 months and mail it to me so that I can decode the DVD format later. It should be an API call that computers can talk to from my end to their ends. And the lesson that I've learned with working with the city is that there are a lot of awesome developers in Portland specifically, and we can serve ourselves. It's kind of interesting to not ask the government to do more to format the data, but if they just give us the raw data, we can format it ourselves. Here are two websites. One of them is MapQuest. Everybody's used MapQuest. This is 2002. And another website, TripCheck. And TripCheck is run by ODOT. And so MapQuest lets you browse around on a map. Here's 8 years later. TripCheck, same interface. And MapQuest has since felt the competitive influence from Google Maps. They've added some fancy features. So there's this concept of middleware, and I think middleware is taking raw data from the government, turning it into happy data. So middleware represents this conversion process. The government collects its data in whatever format it wants, but the way that developers want to use it, it needs to be nice, structured, replicable, and happy. So from a government's perspective, there's limited resources on the government's end. And I think that they should spend as much of their resources, as much of their time, releasing as much structured data as possible. And then when it gets to the community, this principle sums it up. Making data happy makes me happy as a developer. I don't mind doing the dirty work of taking 2 data sets from 2 different places and turning them into something that another developer will find valuable. A good example of this kind of ecosystem is Twitter. So Twitter has one API. It's a structured data interface that's replicable. So you can make automated calls to Twitter. And what you see is a ecosystem of Twitter apps. Everybody has their favorite Twitter app. And the opposite of a nice API is something like a CAPTCHA. So CAPTCHAs are designed to prevent computer access. They're these systems that you put in place so that computers can't get at data. And I look at a lot of these data.gov or these clearinghouses as CAPTCHAs. So here's an example. Here's the NYC data mine. This is for the NYC Big Apps contest, and there are 6 steps to download a dataset that a human has to go through, and it's very hard to program a computer to do this. So building these human interfaces like the DataMine application, they take expertise, they take time, and they take money. Name a government that has an excess of all 3 of these. If instead they took their expertise, time, and money into making the data better and releasing it in a raw format that's optimized for computer interaction, the community will do the job of optimizing for humans, because we like to do that, and we're better at it anyway. So that sums up what I've learned at Civic Apps. Thank you.